The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training compound as Elena Vasquez wheeled herself through the gates for the first time. The young woman's hands gripped the wheels of her custom racing wheelchair with the same determination that had carried her through 3 years of physical therapy. At 25, she possessed an intensity in her dark eyes that made seasoned soldiers take notice, though most quickly looked away when they saw the chair. Elena had not always needed wheels to move. 3 years earlier, she had been Sergeant Elena Vasquez of the 82nd Airborne Division, a paratrooper with dreams of joining Special Forces. During a training exercise in Georgia, a faulty parachute deployment had sent her crashing into rocky terrain at 40 miles per hour. The impact shattered 3 vertebrae and changed her life forever. Doctors told her she would never walk again. The Army told her she could take a medical discharge with full benefits. Everyone told her that her military career was over. Elena told them all they were wrong. The Warrior Transition Unit at Fort Bragg had seen many injured soldiers pass through its doors, but few had fought their way back with Elena's fierce determination. While other wounded veterans focused on adapting to civilian life, Elena focused on staying in the fight. She studied every regulation, every accommodation policy, every precedent for disabled soldiers remaining on active duty. She learned that the military had roles for people with disabilities, though combat positions remained off-limits. That restriction ate at her daily. Elena had not joined the Army to push papers or answer phones. She had joined to serve on the front lines, to protect her country with her life if necessary. The wheelchair had not changed that burning desire to serve, but it had seemingly closed every door to meaningful military service. Everything changed the day she met Colonel James Morrison. Colonel Morrison was a legend in sniper circles. A Vietnam veteran who had later served in Desert Storm and early operations in Afghanistan, he had been tasked with developing new training programs for long-range marksmen. The colonel was visiting the Warrior Transition Unit to give a motivational speech when he noticed Elena in the back of the room, paying more attention than anyone else to his discussion of ballistics and wind calculation. After his presentation, Morrison approached Elena's wheelchair. Most people spoke to her differently now, their voices filled with pity or awkward encouragement. Morrison looked her straight in the eyes and spoke to her like a soldier. "You were airborne," he said, noting the faded unit patch on her civilian jacket. "Yes, sir. 82nd, Elena replied, straightening unconsciously despite sitting down. "Good outfit. What were you planning to do before this?" Morrison gestured toward the wheelchair without sympathy or awkwardness. "Special Forces, sir. Wanted to be a ranger." Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "What do you know about precision shooting?" "Standard infantry training, sir. I was decent with an M4, better than average with the M249. "Those are spray and pray weapons," Morrison said dismissively. "I'm talking about real shooting. One shot, one target, distances that matter." Elena felt a spark of interest. "I'm willing to learn, sir." Over the next hour, Morrison explained the current challenges facing military sniper programs. The conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan had created an enormous demand for precision marksmen, but training quality snipers took time and resources. Most importantly, it took the right kind of mind. Morrison believed that mental attributes mattered more than physical ones in long-range shooting. A sniper's job is 90% mental calculation and 10% trigger pull, Morrison explained. You need to read wind, calculate distance, account for temperature and humidity, predict target movement, and then make a perfect shot under extreme stress. Physical fitness is important for getting to the shooting position, but once you're there, it's all about what's between your ears. Morrison studied Elena's face as he spoke. He saw the same focus and intensity that he recognized in his best students. More importantly, he saw someone who had already proven she could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. "There's something else," Morrison continued. Some of the best precision shooters I've known had physical limitations that actually improved their shooting. Steadier hands, better breath control, increased focus. A person who can't rely on physical mobility learns to make every shot count. Elena's heart began to race. "Are you saying what I think you're saying, sir?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "I'm saying that I've been authorized to pilot a program testing whether wounded warriors can serve effectively in specialized roles that traditional thinking says they can't handle. If you're interested, and if you can prove you have what it takes, there might be a place for you in my sniper training program." The offer seemed impossible. Elena had researched every possible way to remain in combat roles, and nothing had seemed viable. But Morrison was offering her a chance to not just stay in the Army, but to train for one of its most elite positions. "What would I have to do to qualify?" Elena asked. Morrison smiled grimly. "Everything a regular sniper candidate has to do, with no accommodations and no lowered standards. If anything, the standards would be higher because you'd be proving a point. Physical fitness tests adapted for your situation, but every bit as demanding. Marksmanship that exceeds normal sniper school requirements. Mental toughness evaluations that would break most people. And you'd have to convince a room full of skeptical officers that you can do a job they think requires 2 working legs." Elena's response was immediate. "When do we start, sir?" The program Morrison described was still theoretical. He would need to get approval from multiple levels of command, design appropriate testing protocols, and overcome decades of institutional resistance to the idea. But he had been impressed by Elena's immediate acceptance of the challenge, and he had learned to trust his instincts about potential snipers. Over the following weeks, Morrison worked behind the scenes to build support for his pilot program, while Elena began an intensive preparation regimen. She started with basic marksmanship, spending hours at the firing range with a standard Army rifle. Her scores were good, but not exceptional. Morrison was not concerned with her initial performance. He was watching how she approached the challenge of improvement. Elena attacked shooting with the same methodical determination she had brought to learning to live with her wheelchair. She studied ballistics manuals, memorized range cards, and practiced breathing exercises until perfect breath control became automatic. She developed her own system for maintaining steady shooting positions from her wheelchair, experimenting with different support configurations and stabilizing techniques. The mental aspects of long-range shooting fascinated Elena. She had always been good with numbers, but precision shooting required mathematical calculations under extreme pressure. Wind speed and direction, target distance, bullet drop, atmospheric pressure, temperature effects on ammunition performance. Every variable had to be factored into split-second decisions. Morrison began visiting Elena's training sessions regularly. He was impressed by her analytical approach to shooting, but more importantly, he was watching for the intangible qualities that separated good shooters from exceptional ones. Patience, the ability to wait motionless for hours, the mental toughness to maintain focus when exhausted, stressed, or under fire, the confidence to take a shot when lives depended on it, and the judgment to hold fire when the shot was not certain. After 6 weeks of preliminary training, Morrison felt ready to present his proposal formally. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in the Pentagon, with representatives from multiple Army commands attending. Morrison had prepared extensive documentation supporting his position, but he knew the real test would be whether the assembled officers could see past Elena's wheelchair to recognize her potential. Elena spent the night before the meeting practicing her presentation. She had been given permission to address the review board directly, an opportunity that Morrison stressed was both rare and crucial. This would be her chance to convince senior Army leadership that she could serve effectively as a sniper despite her disability. The morning of the meeting, Elena arrived at the Pentagon 3 hours early. She wanted time to compose herself and review her notes one final time. Morrison met her in the parking garage, and together they made their way through security and up to the conference room where her future would be decided. The conference room held 12 officers, ranging from majors to a brigadier general. Elena recognized the skepticism in several faces as she wheeled herself to the front of the room. These were combat veterans who had seen soldiers die because their units were not properly trained or equipped. They would not approve a program that put soldiers at risk simply to make a political statement about disability inclusion. Morrison introduced Elena and provided background on her service record and injury. Then he outlined his proposal for a pilot program testing whether certain wounded warriors could serve effectively in sniper roles. The presentation was professional and thorough, but Elena could sense the skepticism in the room growing stronger. When Morrison finished, the brigadier general spoke first. "Colonel Morrison, I appreciate your dedication to helping wounded soldiers find meaningful ways to continue serving, but our sniper teams operate in the most dangerous environments our military faces. These soldiers need to be able to move quickly across difficult terrain, carry heavy equipment for long distances, and extract rapidly when compromised. I fail to see how someone confined to a wheelchair could meet these basic requirements." Elena had expected this objection. "General, if I may respond," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The general gestured for her to proceed. Elena spoke for 15 minutes, outlining her research into sniper operations and how many missions could be conducted effectively by someone with her limitations. She explained her training progress and demonstrated her knowledge of advanced marksmanship principles. Most importantly, she argued that her disability had actually enhanced certain skills crucial to precision shooting. "General, I spent 3 years learning to adapt to what others saw as limitations. That experience taught me to find solutions where others see only problems. I learned to be more patient, more focused, more determined than I ever was before my injury. These are exactly the qualities that make an effective sniper." When Elena finished, the room was quiet. Several officers exchanged glances, and Elena could sense that she had at least given them something to consider. The questions that followed were tough but fair, focusing on practical concerns about deployment, equipment modifications, and team integration. The meeting concluded with no immediate decision. The review board would deliberate and provide their recommendation within 2 weeks. Elena and Morrison were dismissed, leaving them to wait and wonder whether 3 months of preparation had been enough to overcome institutional skepticism. As they left the Pentagon, Morrison was unusually quiet. Elena finally asked what he was thinking. "I think you did well," Morrison said. "You answered their questions honestly and showed them you understand what you're asking for. But I'd be lying if I said I was confident about the outcome." "The Army doesn't like to take risks, especially with programs that challenge traditional thinking." Elena nodded. She had given everything she could to the presentation. Now she had to trust that the officers making the decision would see past her wheelchair to recognize her potential. The next 2 weeks would determine whether her military career would continue or end with a medical discharge, and a lifetime of wondering what might have been. The wait began, and with it, the most difficult period of Elena's recovery. She had survived the physical trauma of her injury and the emotional challenge of accepting her new limitations. Now she faced the possibility that her dreams of continued military service might be permanently out of reach. But Elena had learned to fight battles that others thought were unwinnable, and she was not ready to surrender yet. The call came on a Thursday afternoon while Elena was practicing breathing exercises in the empty gymnasium. Morrison's voice carried none of his usual confidence when he asked her to meet him in his office immediately. Elena wheeled herself across the base with a growing sense of dread, certain that the review board had rejected the pilot program. Morrison was sitting behind his desk with a folder marked "Classified" when Elena arrived. His expression was unreadable as he gestured for her to close the door and move closer to his desk. The review board made their decision, Morrison said without preamble. They approved a limited pilot program with significant restrictions and oversight requirements. Elena felt her heart jump, but Morrison's serious expression kept her from celebrating. What kind of restrictions, sir? Morrison opened the folder and pulled out several pages of dense military bureaucracy. You'll train alongside regular sniper school candidates, but with additional evaluation criteria. Your performance must exceed normal graduation standards, not just meet them. You'll have a dedicated observer throughout training who will file weekly reports on your progress. And if you graduate, your initial deployment will be limited to specific mission types that the review board considers appropriate for your physical limitations. Elena absorbed this information. The restrictions were significant, but they were not deal breakers. When does training start, sir? 6 weeks, Fort Benning. But Elena... Morrison paused, his expression growing more serious. Understand what you're walking into. The instructors at sniper school don't know about the pilot program. They'll see you as an experiment, maybe even a distraction from training real soldiers. Some of your fellow students will resent your presence, thinking you're taking a spot from someone more qualified. The press will probably get wind of this eventually, which will create additional pressure. You'll be under a microscope from day one. Morrison continued, the failure rate at sniper school is over 60% under normal circumstances. Students who are physically fit, mentally prepared, and have the full support of their instructors still wash out regularly. You'll be facing all the standard challenges, plus several that are unique to your situation. Elena had spent 3 years learning to face situations where the odds were stacked against her. I understand the challenges, sir. I'm ready for them. Morrison studied her face for a long moment. I believe you are. But there's one more thing you need to know. The review board's approval came with a condition that I haven't mentioned yet. If you fail to graduate from sniper school, the pilot program ends immediately. There won't be a second chance or a different approach. Your failure would be used as evidence that the concept is fundamentally flawed. The weight of this responsibility settled on Elena's shoulders. She was not just training for her own career, she was carrying the hopes of every wounded warrior who might benefit from similar programs in the future. The pressure was enormous, but it also clarified her purpose. No pressure, Elena said with a slight smile. Morrison laughed, despite himself. Exactly. No pressure at all. The 6 weeks before sniper school began passed quickly. Elena intensified her training regimen, spending 8 hours daily at the rifle range and studying advanced marksmanship texts late into each night. Morrison arranged for her to work with Master Sergeant Rodriguez, a former sniper instructor who specialized in long-range precision shooting. Rodriguez was initially skeptical about Elena's chances, but he was professional enough to give her honest feedback and quality instruction. During their first session, he watched Elena fire 20 rounds at a target 300 yards away. Her grouping was decent, but not exceptional. Your fundamentals are solid, Rodriguez told her, but solid isn't enough for sniper school. You need to be shooting expert-level groups consistently before you even arrive at Benning. Rodriguez identified several areas where Elena could improve. Her trigger control was good but not perfect. Her position stability needed work, particularly adapting her wheelchair-based shooting positions to match the precision required for long-range work. Most importantly, she needed to develop the ability to perform calculations quickly and accurately under stress. Elena threw herself into addressing every weakness Rodriguez identified. She practiced trigger control for hours, using dry-firing exercises to develop perfect finger placement and follow-through. She experimented with different wheelchair configurations and shooting rests until she found setups that provided rock-solid stability. She worked math problems while running wind sprints with her wheelchair, training her brain to perform calculations while her body was under stress. Rodriguez pushed Elena harder than any instructor she had worked with previously. He created scenarios designed to test her mental toughness, having her hold shooting positions for extended periods while he provided distracting commentary. He made her solve complex ballistic problems while dealing with artificial time pressure. Most challenging, he forced her to maintain focus and accuracy while dealing with equipment failures and unexpected complications. Real sniper work isn't conducted under ideal conditions, Rodriguez explained. Your rifle might malfunction, your communication equipment might fail, the weather might turn ugly, and you might be under enemy fire while trying to make a precision shot. If you can't maintain accuracy under stress, you'll never make it through sniper school. Elena's marksmanship improved dramatically under Rodriguez's instruction. By the 4th week of intensive training, she was consistently shooting groups that would qualify as expert-level performance. More importantly, she had developed the confidence that comes with knowing her equipment and capabilities thoroughly. Rodriguez began incorporating more complex scenarios into Elena's training. He had her practice shooting from various wheelchair positions, adapting to different terrain features and target angles. He taught her to read wind conditions by observing grass movement, flag behavior, and mirage patterns. Most importantly, he helped her develop an intuitive understanding of how various environmental factors affected bullet flight. During the final week before Elena's departure for Fort Benning, Rodriguez conducted a comprehensive evaluation of her readiness. The test included precision shooting at multiple distances, rapid target engagement scenarios, and complex ballistic problem-solving under time pressure. Elena's performance exceeded Rodriguez's expectations in every category. "You're ready," Rodriguez told her after the evaluation. "Your shooting skills are solid, your knowledge base is comprehensive, and your mental approach is sound. But remember that sniper school tests more than marksmanship. They'll evaluate your ability to work as part of a team, your decision-making under pressure, and your capacity to adapt to unexpected challenges. Stay focused on your strengths, but be ready to learn from every experience." Elena arrived at Fort Benning on a Sunday evening, the day before sniper school was scheduled to begin. The base was familiar territory from her previous Army training, but returning as a sniper candidate felt different. She was older, more experienced, and carrying the weight of expectations that went far beyond personal achievement. The barracks assignment created Elena's first challenge. Standard military housing was not designed for wheelchair accessibility, but Elena had learned to adapt to such situations. She requested a ground-floor room and made arrangements for basic modifications that would allow her to function effectively. Some of her fellow students watched these preparations with obvious curiosity, though none approached her directly. Elena's class consisted of 32 students drawn from various Army units. They were an experienced group, with most students having at least 4 years of military service and combat deployments. Several had attended other specialized schools like Ranger or airborne training. Elena quickly identified herself as one of the few soldiers without significant combat experience, a disadvantage that her wheelchair only emphasized. The first day of instruction began with administrative briefings and equipment issue. Elena had worked with the school's staff to ensure that her equipment was properly adapted for her needs, but she was determined to use standard gear wherever possible. She wanted no special accommodations that might be seen as giving her an unfair advantage or undermining the legitimacy of her performance. Chief Warrant Officer Thompson, the school's senior instructor, addressed the class after the administrative requirements were completed. Thompson was a 20-year veteran with multiple combat deployments and a reputation for demanding excellence from his students. His opening remarks set the tone for the weeks ahead. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most challenging training you will experience in your Army careers. Over the next 8 weeks, we will attempt to teach you skills that take years to master fully. Most of you will not graduate. Those who do graduate will carry responsibility for life and death decisions that affect not just your own units, but strategic objectives at the highest levels." Thompson's eyes swept across the assembled students, pausing briefly on Elena before continuing. This school has no patience for individuals who cannot meet our standards. We don't care about your previous achievements, your personal circumstances, or your reasons for being here. We care only about your ability to perform as a precision marksman under combat conditions. If you cannot meet our standards, you will be removed from the program immediately. The chief warrant officer outlined the curriculum for the coming weeks. The first 2 weeks would focus on advanced marksmanship and ballistic theory. Weeks 3 and 4 would cover fieldcraft, camouflage, and observation techniques. Weeks 5 and 6 would integrate these skills in increasingly complex field exercises. The final 2 weeks would consist of comprehensive evaluations designed to test every aspect of sniper performance. Elena listened carefully to Thompson's description of the physical requirements built into the curriculum. Students would be expected to carry full equipment loads over long distances, construct camouflaged positions in various terrain types, and maintain observation posts for extended periods. Many of these requirements had been adapted for Elena's participation, but the adaptations were designed to maintain equivalent difficulty levels rather than provide easier alternatives. After the briefing, students were dismissed to prepare for the first day of marksmanship instruction. Elena wheeled herself to the armory to check out her assigned rifle, a standard Army M24 sniper weapon system. The rifle was familiar from her training with Rodriguez, but Elena spent several minutes confirming that the scope was properly zeroed and the weapon was clean and functional. Several of her classmates approached Elena during the equipment preparation period. Most were professionally curious about how her training would be modified, but a few made comments that revealed underlying skepticism about her presence in the program. "No offense," said Sergeant Miller, a Ranger-qualified soldier from the 75th Regiment, "but I'm wondering how someone in a wheelchair plans to handle the fieldcraft portions of this course. A lot of what we'll be doing requires crawling through brush, climbing over obstacles, and moving quickly across rough terrain." Elena had expected such questions and had prepared honest answers. The school has developed modified requirements that test the same skills using different methods. I'll be evaluated on my ability to establish effective shooting positions and maintain concealment, just like everyone else. The specific techniques will be adapted, but the standards won't be lowered. Staff Sergeant Garcia, a veteran of multiple Afghanistan deployments, was more direct. "I respect your determination, but I'm concerned about safety. In real operations, snipers work in teams. If my spotter can't move when we need to relocate quickly, we both end up dead. How do you address that concern?" Elena appreciated Garcia's straightforward approach. "That's a valid concern that I take seriously. My initial deployments will be limited to mission types where mobility requirements are compatible with my capabilities. I'm not expecting to be assigned to missions that require rapid movement across difficult terrain." Garcia nodded thoughtfully. "Fair enough. I hope you prove me wrong about your limitations." The conversation was interrupted by the call to assemble for the first marksmanship lesson. Elena followed her classmates to the outdoor firing range, where Chief Thompson and 3 other instructors were waiting with targets set at various distances. Thompson's opening remarks to the marksmanship portion of the course were characteristically blunt. "Everything you think you know about shooting is probably wrong. Infantry marksmanship and precision shooting are completely different skills. Infantry shooting focuses on rapid target engagement at relatively close range. Precision shooting requires perfect accuracy at extended range, often under environmental conditions that make accurate shooting extremely difficult." Thompson explained that the class would begin with basic precision shooting at 300 yards, then gradually extend to 800 yards by the end of the marksmanship phase. Students would be required to achieve specific accuracy standards at each distance before progressing to longer ranges. Failure to meet these standards would result in immediate removal from the program. Elena felt confident about the marksmanship requirements. Her training with Rodriguez had prepared her well for the technical aspects of precision shooting. However, she was aware that every aspect of her performance would be scrutinized more carefully than that of her classmates. The first shooting exercise confirmed Elena's expectations. Her initial group of 10 shots at 300 yards measured 2.1 inches, well within the required standard of 3 inches. Several of her classmates struggled to meet the accuracy requirement, while Elena's performance placed her among the top shooters in the class. Thompson observed Elena's shooting technique carefully, noting her wheelchair-based position and modified support systems. After the exercise, he approached Elena privately. "Your shooting is solid," Thompson said. "I've reviewed your training records and I understand what you've been working on with Master Sergeant Rodriguez. I want you to know that you'll be evaluated by the same standards as every other student in this class. I won't make accommodations that compromise the integrity of this program." Elena appreciated Thompson's directness. "I wouldn't expect anything else, Chief. I'm here to earn my place, not to be given one." Thompson studied Elena's face for a moment. "We'll see. Tomorrow we start working at 500 yards and the environmental conditions will be more challenging. Today's performance was good, but good isn't enough to graduate from this program." Elena spent that evening reviewing ballistic tables and practicing equipment manipulation in her barracks room. She felt confident about her shooting skills, but she knew that marksmanship was only one component of sniper training. The real challenges lay ahead in field craft and field exercises, where her physical limitations would be tested most severely. As she prepared for sleep, Elena reflected on the day's events. The initial skepticism from some classmates had been expected, and Thompson's demanding standards were exactly what she had hoped for. She had proven that she belonged on the firing line, but proving she belonged in the field would be a much greater challenge. The morning fog hung thick over the Georgia pine forest as Elena positioned herself behind a camouflaged firing line 600 yards from her target. It was week 7 of sniper school, and today's exercise would determine whether she advanced to the final evaluation phase. Around her, the remaining 18 students from her original class of 32 prepared for the most challenging test they had faced. Chief Thompson's voice crackled through the radio headset that each student wore. "This is your final field exercise before graduation testing. You have 6 hours to locate, identify, and engage 5 targets positioned throughout the training area. Each target represents a different tactical scenario that you might encounter in combat operations. Miss more than one target, and you fail the exercise immediately." Elena checked her equipment one final time. Her modified wheelchair had been equipped with all-terrain wheels and a stabilized shooting platform that she had developed during weeks of field training. The adaptations were ingenious, but had required Elena to master entirely new techniques for movement and positioning in outdoor environments. The first target was relatively straightforward. A stationary silhouette at 400 yards positioned in an open area. Elena spotted it quickly through her scope and calculated the environmental factors affecting the shot. Wind was light and variable, temperature was cool and stable, and the range was within her comfort zone. She controlled her breathing, applied gentle pressure to the trigger, and watched the target fall immediately. Target 2 required more skill. Elena had to locate a partially concealed figure positioned among trees at an unknown distance between 500 and 700 yards. She spent 20 minutes glassing the suspected area through her spotting scope before identifying a small section of camouflaged clothing barely visible behind a large oak tree. Range estimation using mil-dot calculations suggested 620 yards, which meant significant bullet drop and wind drift would affect the shot. Elena adjusted her scope settings and waited for wind conditions to stabilize. The shot required perfect timing, as the target was only partially visible and wind gusts could push her bullet several inches off target at that range. When conditions aligned, Elena took the shot and immediately saw the target fall backward, confirming a hit. The third target tested Elena's ability to adapt to changing conditions. The scenario required engaging a moving target at 300 yards while dealing with a sudden weather change that brought heavy rain and gusty winds. Elena had practiced similar scenarios during training, but the real environmental conditions were more challenging than anything she had experienced in controlled exercises. The rain made target identification more difficult and created unpredictable wind patterns that affected bullet flight. Elena watched the target's movement pattern for several minutes, calculating lead time and environmental adjustments. The shot had to be perfect because she would only have one opportunity before the target moved into cover. Elena synchronized her shot with the target's movement pattern and environmental conditions, leading the target by the calculated amount and adjusting for wind drift. The bullet struck center mass, dropping the target immediately and confirming Elena's third successful engagement. Target 4 represented the most technically challenging shot of the exercise. Elena had to engage a small target at 800 yards from an elevated position that required shooting downhill at a steep angle. Downhill shooting created additional ballistic complications that many experienced marksmen struggled to master. The angle affected bullet trajectory in ways that contradicted normal shooting instincts. Elena spent considerable time calculating the proper hold for the angled shot. Gravity affected bullet flight differently when shooting uphill or downhill, requiring adjustments to normal range estimation and scope settings. She also had to account for the psychological tendency to shoot high when firing from elevated positions, a common error that caused missed shots even among experienced snipers. The target was barely visible through the scope, appearing as a small dark shape against the forest background. Elena verified her calculations twice before committing to the shot. The bullet's flight time at 800 yards meant that any error in calculation or execution would result in a clean miss with no opportunity for correction. Elena controlled her breathing, applied steady pressure to the trigger, and sent the shot down range. Through her scope, she watched the target disappear, indicating a successful hit. 4 targets down, 1 remaining, and Elena was still perfect for the exercise. The final target required Elena to demonstrate skills that had nothing to do with marksmanship. She had to locate a hidden observer who was camouflaged somewhere within a 200-yard section of forest. The observer was equipped with binoculars and was actively searching for students, but remained motionless and hidden. Success required exceptional observation skills and patience rather than shooting ability. Elena positioned herself where she could observe the suspected area systematically. She had learned during training that finding hidden observers required looking for unnatural shapes, inconsistent textures, or subtle movements rather than obvious visual cues. Most hidden positions were nearly perfect, with only small details revealing their locations. For 90 minutes, Elena methodically glassed every section of the designated area. She identified several potential hiding spots but could not confirm any targets. The psychological pressure was intense. Failure to locate the final target would mean failing the entire exercise regardless of her perfect shooting performance on the previous 4 targets. Elena forced herself to slow down and examine the area even more carefully. She had learned that impatience was the enemy of good observation, leading to rushed scanning that missed important details. As the time limit approached, Elena spotted a tiny reflection that seemed inconsistent with the natural environment, sunlight glinting off something that might be binocular lenses. She focused her spotting scope on the area where she had seen the reflection and spent several minutes confirming her assessment. Eventually, she identified the outline of a camouflaged figure positioned behind a fallen log, nearly invisible except for the brief reflection that had caught her attention. Elena reported the position through her radio, providing precise coordinates for the hidden observer. Chief Thompson's voice confirmed her success moments later. Elena had completed all 5 phases of the final field exercise perfectly, achieving a score that placed her among the top performers in the class. As students returned to the assembly area, Elena felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The final field exercise had been the last major hurdle before graduation testing, and her performance had proven that her physical limitations did not prevent her from mastering the full range of sniper skills. However, she knew that graduation testing would present even greater challenges. Chief Thompson addressed the class after all students had completed the exercise. 18 of you successfully completed today's requirements. The 14 students who did not complete the exercise satisfactorily have been removed from the program. For those remaining, graduation testing begins Monday morning. Thompson continued. Graduation testing consists of 3 phases conducted over 5 days. Phase 1 tests your marksmanship skills under the most challenging conditions we can create. Phase 2 evaluates your fieldcraft abilities in scenarios that simulate actual combat operations. Phase 3 requires you to integrate all your training in a comprehensive field problem that will test every aspect of sniper performance. Elena listened carefully as Thompson outlined the specific requirements for graduation testing. The marksmanship phase would include shooting at distances up to 1,000 yards under various weather conditions and time constraints. The fieldcraft phase would test camouflage, observation, and stalking skills in scenarios where detection meant immediate failure. The final integration phase would combine all skills in a realistic tactical scenario. That evening, Elena reviewed her performance during 8 weeks of training. Her marksmanship scores had consistently ranked among the best in the class, with several perfect scores on challenging shooting exercises. Her fieldcraft skills had taken longer to develop, but she had ultimately mastered techniques adapted for her wheelchair that achieved the same objectives as traditional methods. Most importantly, Elena had earned the respect of her classmates and instructors through consistent performance and professional attitude. The initial skepticism about her presence in the program had been replaced by recognition that she had earned her place through ability rather than accommodation. Graduation testing began on a cold Monday morning with the most demanding marksmanship evaluation Elena had ever attempted. Students were required to engage targets at 600, 800, and 1,000 yards under time pressure while dealing with challenging weather conditions that included gusty winds and intermittent rain. Elena approached each shot with the methodical precision she had developed during months of training. At 600 yards, she achieved a perfect score despite difficult wind conditions. At 800 yards, her performance remained excellent, even as several classmates struggled with the extended range and environmental factors. At 1,000 yards, Elena faced the longest shot of her military career under test conditions. The 1,000-yard target appeared tiny through her scope, barely visible against the forest background. Environmental calculations became critical at such distances, as small errors in wind reading or range estimation would result in misses measured in feet rather than inches. Elena spent several minutes confirming her calculations before committing to the shot. The bullet's flight time at 1,000 yards was nearly 2 seconds, long enough for Elena to track its trajectory through her scope before impact. She watched the target fall immediately, confirming a perfect hit on the longest shot she had ever attempted. Elena had achieved perfect scores on all 3 marksmanship phases of graduation testing. The fieldcraft phase tested Elena's ability to move undetected through forest terrain while maintaining observation of designated areas. The exercise required her to establish 3 different observation posts over a 12-hour period while avoiding detection by roving patrols equipped with night vision equipment. Elena's modified techniques for movement and concealment proved effective throughout the fieldcraft exercise. Her wheelchair-based positions offered stability advantages for long-term observation, while her camouflage techniques successfully defeated detection attempts by the patrol teams. She completed all fieldcraft requirements without detection, achieving another perfect score. The final integration phase combined all training elements in a realistic tactical scenario. Elena was assigned to provide overwatch for a simulated raid on an enemy compound, requiring her to engage multiple targets at various ranges, while coordinating with ground forces through radio communication. The scenario tested Elena's ability to prioritize targets, make rapid firing adjustments, and maintain situation awareness while dealing with complex tactical developments. She successfully engaged all assigned targets while providing accurate intelligence reports to the ground force commander. Her performance during the integration phase exceeded the minimum requirements for graduation. Friday afternoon brought the moment Elena had worked toward for 8 months. Chief Thompson assembled the surviving students for graduation ceremonies and final results. 11 students from the original class of 32 had successfully completed all requirements of sniper school. Thompson called Elena's name among the graduates, announcing her selection for advanced training opportunities normally reserved for the most exceptional sniper school graduates. Elena had not only succeeded in proving that wounded warriors could serve effectively as snipers, she had graduated as one of the top performers in her class. As Elena received her sniper qualification badge, she thought about the long journey from a hospital bed in Georgia to this moment of achievement. The physical challenges had been significant, but the mental challenges had been even greater. She had proven to herself and others that limitations could be overcome through determination, preparation, and refusal to accept defeat. Morrison was present for the graduation ceremony, wearing the satisfied expression of someone whose faith had been vindicated. As Elena wheeled across the stage to receive her certificate, Morrison knew that his pilot program had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Elena had not just graduated from sniper school, she had established a new standard for what wounded warriors could achieve. The story that began with doctors saying Elena would never walk again had evolved into something far different. Elena Vasquez, paralyzed paratrooper turned sniper, had proven that the most powerful weapon in any arsenal was the determination to succeed against impossible odds. Her single shot had indeed spoken louder than war. It had spoken louder than doubt, limitation, and the voice that whispers that some dreams are impossible to achieve. Elena's graduation marked the beginning of a new chapter in her military career and established a precedent for wounded warriors throughout the armed forces. She had proven that the question was never whether someone could move their legs, but whether they possessed the mental toughness to hit their target when it mattered most. In Elena's case, that target had been the hearts and minds of those who believed that some barriers could never be overcome.